the last stage in any game has to be the absolute showstopper. This is where everything the game has been building up towards reaches the inevitable climax. Some games might have a cool boss, a fancy level, a major story revelation, an interesting mechanic, and a lot of other things that make the last sequence of the game feel exciting and epic. But there are some games where everything comes together, leaving players at the edge of their seats with an experience that is moving, exciting, and memorable. So, let's count down the top 10 greatest video game climaxes. To be clear, we aren't just considering the final boss or the ending. We are considering the whole final level, the stakes made in the story, the challenge in the gameplay, and the impact on the players. With that, let's begin. Number 10. Castlevania Symphony of the Night. A game that needs no introduction, Symphony of the Night is one of the greatest success stories of the PlayStation. Originally intended as a small project for hardcore fans while they work on Castlevania in 3D, the game grew in popularity by word of mouth, with its unique mix of exploration and combat creating the Metroidvania term and genre. It left its imprint on the gaming world. But what makes the climax of this game exciting is how players found it. The game came out in 1997. There were no wikis or let's plays to guide people through the game. Best you could do was GameFAQs. But that wasn't a problem. People could reach 100% completion and defeat Richter even without these guides. But this left fans unsatisfied. Some of the game's iconic antagonists were missing from the game, like Death and Dracula. And were they supposed to believe that Richter Belmont, hero of a previous Castlevania game, just chose to be evil suddenly? So they started exploring some more. By triggering the right events, the players could access the inverted castle. It had the exact same layout as the first castle but flipped 180 degrees. This blew players' minds as they realized that the whole castle was designed with the reverse in mind. The entire place had to be explored again, opening up the 200% completion rate. Enemies were harder, the bosses were more challenging, and more of the story would be revealed to you, until you finally reach Alucard's father, Dracula. He is well worth the wait as you finally learn about the relationship between father and son. In true Castlevania fashion, Dracula has a larger-than-life form, orchestral music, and attacks that cover the entire screen. He was a fitting conclusion to a game that already had so much but kept on giving. Number 9. Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. The Metal Gear series is convoluted, confusing, campy, and beautiful all at the same time. The many characters whose lives are shattered and fashioned by war show the extent at which war can damage people. Wars that are supposed to end conflict end up creating the people who will start the next conflict. While all Metal Gear games have some commentary on war, Snake Eater stands out in that it presents all sides as equally valid and equally flawed. The main villains have always been complex characters, sometimes comical. But the boss was different. She said that she was defecting to the Soviet Union, but some of her behavior seems a bit off. From the way she treats Snake like a son to releasing Eva, she is almost sorrowful at the events that would lead Snake to oppose her. However, this wouldn't be a Metal Gear game if there wasn't some sort of mobile nuclear platform for you to fight, and that takes the form of... While some may say that the Metal Gear series is more movie than game, there is no denying that it is a damn good movie. The final chase sequence with Volgin in the Shadow Hog is extremely kinetic and cinematic. It forces you to juggle between Snake's health, Eva's health, the Shagohod, and the generic enemies that stand in your way. The fight with the Shagohod itself is multi-stage, from a sniper challenge, to fighting it on Eva's motorcycle, to fighting it on foot. It forces you to use everything you have learned in the game to bring it down. While Volgin can be the campier of the Metal Gear villains, his death carried a lot of symbolism that made him seem almost sympathetic. We often hear him say Kuwabara Kuwabara. This is the Japanese equivalent of knock on wood, a mantra to ward off bad luck. According to Japanese folklore, lightning does not strike the Kuwabara or mulberry bush. The one time Volgin forgets to say this mantra is the time his unnatural electricity gets struck down by natural lightning. The climactic confrontation with the boss is iconic for the series. The boss has defeated Snake at every turn, but now you have a chance to face her. And she is one hell of a boss fight. She can dismantle your weapons, fighting her at close quarters is tricky, and she can use her Patriot to counter you. To fight her, you have to utilize camouflage, counter her tackles, and conserve your ammo. There are no cute tricks against the boss, just skill. The Field of White Flowers was a perfect, quiet contrast to the action set piece of the Shagohod, striking the perfect balance of action and strategy while making it all meaningful to the story. It's a prime example of everything that makes the Metal Gear series amazing. Number 8. Undertale. Rare is the game that can move the players so much. Whether it was the humor, characters, or mechanics, players found something to connect to. While many games may offer you a good/paragon/hero option to solve the game's conflict, Undertale doesn't make it a choice, but a commitment. To get the best ending, you have to actively refuse killing monsters. However, doing so holds no real benefit. It is faster to kill the monsters, and doing so will allow your character to increase their LB. Sparing monsters does not give you EXP, and this means you will be stuck at level 1 for the entire game. But players were determined to stay on the pacifist route, going through the game with a measly 20 HP, which culminates in... When it looks like you finally have a happy ending, Flowey comes out and reminds you of why you hate the little shit. He then reveals himself to be Azrael, the child of Toriel and Asgore. Then you get a real final boss. With psychedelic visuals and unrelenting attacks, Azrael is a force to be reckoned with. Then, as Azrael takes away your options, you realize the only way to beat Azrael is to save your friends. The game then brings you into a kind of Mega Man style boss rush, where you have to face your old enemies again. Except this time you are saving them, not plowing through them. Combined with Toby Fox's incredible music, this finale made everyone reminiscent of the finale of Gurren Lagann.
This is like Gurren Lagann levels of like
I
ending.
know.
It's so fucking rad.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
It doesn't matter what the game throws at you, you are determined to stay on your pacifist route, saving all the monsters, even Azrael. Number 7. God of War. Over-the-top violence and larger-than-life bosses, God of War was a brutal action-adventure that had you carving out a bloody path through ancient Greece. From the unforgettable Hydra to the towering Pandora's Guardian, the bosses would get the players on the edge of their seat. Kratos is violence and madness personified, but he is the hero not of a Greek epic, but a Greek tragedy. He is a man of great stature, a captain in the Spartan army, but his lust for power pushes him to make a deal with Ares, and under the influence of the god, goes insane and in a blind rage kills his wife and daughter. With the ashes of his family covering him, painting the ghostly white of his skin, the ghost of Sparta curses Ares and wanders, seeking redemption. He actually draws much similarity to Hercules and Ajax, as most of the game is him trying to atone for what he has done. There is even a metaphorical and symbolic fall, as Kratos descends to the underworlds and escapes it. This all boils down to a final showdown with Ares, where Kratos has gained the power to kill a god. This is a pretty standard final boss sequence, but then the game takes it up a notch with the second phase of the fight. Kratos is forced to face the very nightmare he is trying to free himself from. The second phase of the fight is a creep rush while you are trying to protect your family. What makes this fight so great is all of the symbolism in it. The enemies take Kratos' image and all of them are trying to kill his family, recreating the nightmare. This whole time, Kratos has just been fighting to get what he wants. But here he is fighting to protect his family. For someone as cruel and selfish as Kratos, to see him remember that he cared for other people is truly moving. Highlighting this is the fact that you can give your own health to your family if they are low on health. The chains that Kratos uses were always symbolic of his servitude to Ares, and as Ares rips it from him, he takes away Kratos' greatest power, but he also allows Kratos to return to his roots as a Spartan to fight him. Not only that, the sword he uses to fight Ares looks like it was being held by a statue of Athena. There is an irony in this, knowing that Kratos accidentally killed his family while he was defiling a temple of Athena. Now she offers him the means to free himself from Ares. The final fight with Ares allows Kratos to come full circle, returning to the loyal Spartan soldier and right back to the sadistic, angry, bloodthirsty god killer we all know and love. Number 6. Halo Reach. Halo Reach serves as a prequel for the series, depicting the events of the Battle of Reach. Players were already aware of this event in passing from the previous Halo installments, so the game had a foregone conclusion. In fact, most of Halo Reach seems to be a competition for who gets the most heroic death. Fans have pointed out that the way each member of Noble Team dies is ironic. George, who loved Reach, dies far away from it. Emil, who had a fascination with knives, was killed by one. Sort of. Even if you know all these people are doomed, each one is painted with enough complexity for you to care about them, making each death still feel like a gut punch. As you progress through the game, every firefight is intense and exhilarating and only getting harder, symbolizing the Covenant gaining ground. The importance of Noble Team is cemented as Halsey gives them Cortana, who tasks them to bring the AI off-planet on a certain Halcyon-class light cruiser by the name of the Pillar of Autumn. They now have to deliver the package to Keyes and secure an escape route for the Pillar of Autumn. Players will get swarmed at every direction here, and they have to keep on their toes and keep moving to survive. The orchestral music heightens the drama of your fight and eerily foreshadows the events about to unfold. As the package is delivered, Emil is killed and Noble Six knows what he has to do now. The one trait of Noble Six that is explicitly mentioned is that Noble Six is a lone wolf. Despite being reminded to shelve that behavior, the Pillar of Autumn now relies on Noble Six acting alone. You have no support in the final firefight. The turret section shows you the scale of the fight as you shoot down ships to allow the Pillar of Autumn to escape. In one of the greatest examples of player immersion, the final objective given to the player is simply to survive. They allow the player to play out Noble Six's last stand, one last chance to raise hell. The enemies will never stop spawning, and it is only a matter of time until the player falls. For a series that had some infamous cliffhangers, Halo Reach ended on such a perfect note. You know that this game moved many players, as many of them loaded up Combat Evolved or Halo 2 and proceeded to just kill as many Covenants as they could as they rained bloody retribution for the Noble Team. Number 5. Final Fantasy VI. Honestly, Final Fantasy has so many exciting climaxes that they could just fill up this entire list. But why 6? While the series has many memorable villains, Kefka will always be the villain who won. In the Floating Continent, Kefka manages to harness the power of the Warring Triad and ascends to godhood. And the first thing he does is reshape the world in his image, changing the entire fucking world map and splitting your party. By the time Celeste wakes up, a year has passed and your entire party has essentially given up. They seem to be content to live their lives in Kefka's new world, drawing little attention to themselves, doing what little good they can. So not only do you have to explore the map again, but you have to collect your party members again to bring one last showdown to Kefka. Towering above the heavens, Kefka's tower is immediately noticeable on the map. Once you get the airship, which is when you recruit your third character, Setzer, you can actually enter Kefka's tower at any time. But doing so unprepared is tantamount to suicide. Unlike in the previous world, Kefka never schemes against you. He never sends armies against your party or plots to kill you. He just sits there, waiting for you to come, as if he is showing just how beneath his notice you are. With his godlike magic, he could easily shoot down the Falcon from the skies or seal the tower. But he doesn't bother doing anything, because that is how little of a threat you are to him. You will need 3 full parties of high-level characters to navigate and survive this massive dungeon. The enemies are tough and there are a few optional bosses if you want to get the last Magicite. This all culminates in facing Kefka. As he flaunts his godhood on you, the fight reaches biblical proportion. He has multiple forms, and each form is reminiscent of the Divine Comedy, symbolizing hell, purgatory, heaven, and finally, Kefka himself. Couple all this with organ music, and it really feels like you are facing God. Number 4. Shadow of the Colossus. If there was ever a game that channels the storytelling of an ancient epic, it would be this one. It made you face down gigantic monolithic creatures with nothing but your sword, bow, horse, and wits. It's a game that communicates so little but says so much through its art direction. The long stretches in between each Colossus is supposed to give you a little bit of breathing room before the fight starts. But as the game progresses, you start to notice something. The world is slowly dying, and Wander's skin is becoming paler, making him look more of a corpse than the girl you are trying to bring back to life. Add to this the memory that some of the Colossus were not malicious towards you. Some of them were just minding their own business until you came and killed them. You have this feeling of dread that there is something the shadow entities are not telling you. This all leads to the last Colossus you have to face. This is it. The last Colossus. You have lost everything. Your humanity, your future, even your horse, all sacrificed for this one shot. While all of the Colossus have been huge, Malice is gargantuan, the size of a building. Malice is reminiscent of a Disney villain, wielding supreme power and showing you just how insignificant you are to him. With the howling wind, storm clouds, and the ruins of a once great civilization, you couldn't ask for a grander stage. Malice is unrelenting, and catching the Colossus's gaze will merit your death. Unlike the other Colossi, Malice's theme is slow, foreboding, and somber, almost like a requiem. But who is it for? Malice knows that if you are here, the others are dead. Is it for them? Is it for you? Or is it for Malice? Consider where Malice is on the world map. Malice probably saw you kill everyone. The Colossus must want vengeance, but is also afraid of what you are capable of. You have sacrificed everything and brought about so much misery. All that is left is for you to follow through. Number 3. Phoenix Wright, Trials and Tribulations. As the final entry in the original Phoenix Wright trilogy, they threw everything at you. You were drawn deeper into the past of the Faye family, Phoenix almost dies, you get to play as Edgeworth for a while, and you are faced with Godot, one of the best rival prosecutors in the franchise. While you can wipe that annoying smirk off Edgeworth's face and make Francisca go histrionic, there is no phasing or breaking Godot. Everything he does is calm, cool, and collected. Whenever Godot pulls an objection, the excitement of Phoenix's theme is derailed with Godot's smooth jazz as he shows you just how incompetent you are. The final case is filled with twists and turns as you figure out who is the real killer, even leading to an epic confrontation with Dahlia Hawthorne, the most sociopathic and dangerous of the criminals that Phoenix has faced. Surprisingly, she is not the final testimony in the game. She is the prelude to one of Phoenix's greatest challenge as a lawyer. And who is the final witness you have to cross-examine? None other than Maya Fey. The person who has been Phoenix's friend, co-worker, and confidant for 3 whole games is the last person standing in your way. You have defended her from being framed multiple times, but this is the first and only time she ever takes to the witness stand. You aren't sure why she is standing in your way, and neither is she. On top of all this, Godot is still here, and he is not pulling any punches either. Maya seems rattled, and looks like she is trying to cover for someone, even if doing so will lead to her imprisonment. Phoenix and the player are completely in the dark and confused. You are trying to get her acquitted, but she is trying her hardest to prevent that. She is practically begging you to stop. But Maya knows Phoenix's tricks and tactics and doesn't hesitate to call you out on it. With a case that has been building up since the first game in the trilogy, this final cross-examination was both exhilarating and heartbreaking at the same time. Number 2. The Last of Us. What can be said about The Last of Us that hasn't already been said? While it wears the trappings of a zombie game, it smartly uses and subverts the tropes of the genre to give players an experience that was moving and emotional. What makes this game so great is that it takes its time. You see Ellie and Joel's relationship develop from a guy escorting a package to partners who trust each other. During their lowest points, they were there for each other and in time open up. Both of them have seen their fair share of tragedy and have built walls around themselves to protect them from it, but for this one person, they are able to lower their guard. It's even more significant for Joel since we see what he goes through, which is what makes the last stage so emotional. The moment the player realizes what is going to happen to Ellie, they just have one thing in mind.
Okay. Well, now you done went and made it personal, you motherfuckers. Okay, we can do that. We can play hardball if you would like to. I'd be fucking obliged. I would love to.
Any paternal or maternal instinct the player has triggers, and they are now on a roaring rampage of revenge. Before, the people you killed was for survival. Now, it's personal. No one wants it to end this way for these two people that have been through so much, but if you take a second to calm down and sober up, you would realize one thing. Marlene is right. The life of one girl for sparing everyone else from the nightmare of the clickers? The right thing to do is to leave Ellie with the fireflies.
Obviously, the noble thing to do would be to save mankind, but human emotion is getting in the way here.
There are some people who have drawn upon their knowledge of virology to justify that you cannot extract a cure with a lobotomy, making Ellie's sacrifice pointless. But even if Ellie knew the cure was a long shot or even bullshit, she would still want to go through with it, if only to give meaning to the deaths of Riley, Tess, and Sam. This game never gives you an option in this matter, further highlighting that this is Joel's story, not yours. All throughout the game, there have been hints that Joel is not a good person, and now we see just how deep that goes. But Joel's violence can be mimicked by the player. There is no reason to kill the other doctors, but most players would do it anyway. The last sequence is a direct callback to the sequence in the intro, showing that Joel has turned Ellie into a surrogate for Sarah, indicative that Joel has never truly moved on from her death. He lost his daughter once, he will not do so again. Everyone be damned. This was an emotional climax that made players face the darkness of their protagonist as well as their own. And the number one greatest video game climax is... Mass Effect 2. While many RPGs are accused of having great stakes which don't match with the side quest riddled gameplay, the same cannot be said of Mass Effect 2. Human colonies are being attacked by the Collectors, so you have to assemble a team to go past the Omega-4 relay. Problem is that any ship that goes through that relay has never returned, essentially making this a suicide mission. Everything you do, from collecting party members to acquiring technologies, all lead to this end in mind. Even the side quests in the game are actually the party members wrapping up unfinished business, so they can go to the mission with no regrets. Shepard will eventually gather a ragtag group of specialists, assassins, and soldiers for this mission. Unfortunately, the Collectors would launch a preemptive strike on the Normandy, kidnapping most of the crew members, forcing the hand of the players into the final confrontation. Diving straight into the home base of the Collectors, the danger is very real. Depending on which choices you made throughout the game, some of your party members could die in death traps. You could lose party members even before getting to the final stage. And this death was permanent, they were not coming back in the ending. You would have to make do with who was left in your team for the rest of your game. Even Shepard could be killed if you made too many bad choices. But the choices aren't random, there is a certain logic to the choices, provided you took the time to learn about each of your squad mates. The Collector base is a gauntlet run, throwing everything it has at you with encounters that just get even more challenging. Drones fly in from everywhere, Harbinger will harass you at every turn, some encounters have time limits or movement restrictions, Husks will rush you, Scions will break you out of cover, it's just one thing after another. The Collector base itself is a great level, with alien architecture, surfaces that seem both organic and metallic, and some body horror. It is incredibly unnerving, adding even more tension to the game. This all culminates in the final boss, the Reaper human larva. You are given a taste of exactly what the Collectors were trying to accomplish, and it just stresses how important your mission is. With frenetic action, a mission that was built up the entire game, and very real stakes, this is why Mass Effect 2 has the best video game climax. Thanks for watching. What were some of your most memorable video game climaxes? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to explain what made it memorable to you. I would love to read your responses. Until the next time our paths cross, farewell.